Let's put it this way: be glad you were born in modern times. We're not going to sugarcoat it. Hollywood has lied to us. Middle Ages hygiene was extremely basic in terms of the disposal of waste products and garbage. Many pandemics and epidemics took place within the medieval era, and funny enough, people were not washing as often even if they knew that, at their time, hygiene was the best weapon in combating such diseases. Many royals saw themselves as being above everyone else, being so special that they had this aura around them which would be vanished if washed. Others believed that it was impossible for them to get dirty as they were divine royalty. It seems that most royals found an excuse to justify not washing, but only a handful of royalties came out of the closet, admitting that they have only washed a couple of times in their entire life. Bathing was seen more like a religious ritual of cleansing the body as well as the spirit. In other words, special and something special should happen on rare occasions. This could be one logic to explain the rare bathing. At the same time, the mentality of royalties was quite different when it came to hygiene. They were probably thinking that if they are not walking around dirt, they weren't able to get filthy, but that is not how hygiene works. In this episode, we discuss what cleanliness was really like for ancient royalty. In the Eastern Empire and Mediterranean, the Roman bathing culture never ended and baths were available without interruption, as were interior drainage and exterior, underground sewage systems. Even in backward places like England, by the 13th century, kings increasingly had hot and cold running water in their palaces, fed from rooftop cisterns and drained to flush out kitchens and/or garderobes. There were many lavatories, called garderobes or privies, included in large medieval buildings such as castles, monasteries, and convents. The garderobes or privy chambers were positioned as far away from the interior chambers as practical and often had double doors added to reduce the smell. Chutes were provided for the discharge, which often led to the castle moat. Privy seats were made of wood or stone. The Sun King is one of the most famous kings in history. He made Versailles truly world famous, pretty impressive. During Louis XIV's reign, the etiquette was particularly restrictive. Everything he did had to be copied by nobles. This was non-negotiable. Similarly, other European courts systematically imitated the French court. King Louis XIV wore perfume throughout his life. He preferred perfumes with strong scents, made with musk. These robust fragrances were used to camouflage the body odor of the king and his court. The nobles of the time didn't wash as often as we do today, but it would be wrong to say that they never washed. Taking a bath was a complex task. Large quantities of water needed to be brought in and heated for a comfortable experience. This didn't encourage cleanliness. In addition, there was a widespread urban legend at the time that water could pass on various diseases. This meant that people didn't really want to take baths. To avoid unpleasant smells, the nobles and King Louis XIV preferred perfume to baths. At the time, the French court was known as the perfumed court. Throughout Europe, Louis XIV was a particular fan of the scent of orange trees. These shrubs, which came from Asia and Europe, had a special status in his palace. He even had an orangery built just for them. He wore perfume with an orange scent with obvious pleasure. The king learned about the art of perfumery from his personal perfumer, Marshall, and even created some of his own aromatic blends. The king wore perfume on his clothes and his wigs, sprayed his favorite scents in his private chambers and on his furniture, and had orange blossom displayed throughout the palace. He rubbed his body with fragrant essences and even added a few drops to his drinks to purify his body. To create these blends, Louis XIV ordered that exotic plants should be brought back to France from all over the world by boat and encouraged his perfumers to innovate by providing them with financial support. While Cleopatra is fabled to have bathed in sour donkey milk, Mary, Queen of Scots, is said to have washed with white wine to ensure a smooth complexion. Mary used white wine to wash her face, given the belief it would help maintain her fashionable alabaster complexion. A devout Catholic, throughout her life, Mary found herself at the mercy of hostile power plays and the bitterness of her cousin, Elizabeth I of England. Queen of Scots, the cost of her expensive beauty regime became a bone of contention for her keeper, the Earl of Shrewsbury, whose allowance to keep Mary in custody was cut by Elizabeth I. With venotherapy, including wine massages, facials and baths, remaining popular today, this shouldn't really come as a surprise. The conversation featured a 16th-century recipe for making a cosmetic brew by boiling rosemary blossoms in white wine, which was referred to as a far bella faccia, literally, to make a beautiful face. The Beautiful Chemistry Project investigated the method, effects on skin quality, and found that it emitted compounds and essential oils that have antibacterial, moisture-binding, collagen growth stimulating, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, brightening and soothing effects. Obviously, popular and frequent bathing in the medieval context was fundamentally different than in the 21st century. It took much more effort to heat water over fire and coals, and, except for the very wealthy, it meant pumping or hauling water from a well and lugging it to a tub or going to a bathhouse. The latter cost money. Not necessarily a lot of money, but it was not entirely free, and it was certainly less convenient than stepping into a shower at home today. So, hygiene would not have been at the same standards as today, but that is still a far cry from kings wiping their sleeves on their velvet robes or having mice running across their banquet tables as Hollywood have you believe. And whatever the standard, kings always had the best of it. However, in the early Renaissance, increasing urbanization led to increasing water contamination, which in turn led doctors to associate communicable disease with water. Water was seen increasingly as unhealthy, just at a time when the Reformation frowned at the notion of men and women sharing public baths. Bathhouses fell into disrepute and increasingly disappeared from the scene, without being replaced for several hundred years by private baths. Thus, while the castles from the 14th and 15th century had hot and cold running water, the palaces of the 18th century had no baths at all. Likewise, while people in the Middle Ages viewed bathing as both hygienic and pleasurable, by the 18th century bathing had been replaced by satchels filled with fat and blood to attract and collect fleas and perfume to cover body odors. Development is not linear and progress not inevitable. Salt, rough cloths and charcoal don't fit the definition of gentle dentistry, yet that was the way people would care for their teeth. Often, they would use water and a rough cloth, scrubbing their teeth. Salt and charcoal were often rubbed across the teeth and then rinsed away. However, the most common way of taking care of teeth involved taking a birch twig and fraying the end, making a primitive brush. Today, when you have a dental emergency, you can take advantage of the latest first aid techniques, easily access a dentist on call or have a walk-in appointment. However, if you were some of the first American settlers, emergency dentistry didn't remotely resemble what we have today. Often, there was a town surgeon. In some cases, this was also the barber, who would pull the tooth or possibly try to fight the infections by applying cabbage worms that would eat away at the damaged tissue. This may have been a common treatment because there was a pervasive belief that dental pain was caused by a worm traveling through the mouth. This theory was not debunked until the 1700s.